All right, welcome you guys. Here it is, the final session this week for the Traditional Skills Summit. It's kind of bittersweet. All good things are going to come to an end, but not yet. It has been so great hanging out with you guys, and we're going to have one last really great session. You guys are in for a treat with Dr. Patrick Jones, and the topic today is something that anybody needs to know, no matter where you are, and this is something you can take control of and do no matter where you are, even in sunny Palm Desert, California. Hello, Linda. Good to see you here. Good to see all of you here. I see Northeast Texas, Central California, SoCal. I've seen, here's Nebraska, Michigan, Maine. Hey, Brenda, Maine. You know what? I'm going to be in Maine next week filming a class. Very excited. We've got people from all over the world, New Zealand, I saw in here. And of course, lots of our Canadian neighbors. So glad you guys are here and can join us. Hoping to come up there and film a class one of these days. We've got somebody we're talking to, but I can't tell you about that yet. Just been a great week and so enjoying it with all of you. Hey, this is the last session. I've already seen some comments in here. Some of you have been to every single session. You guys are amazing. Give us a shout out. Give us some high fives. Okay, let it fly in there. I want to hear from you that have been here all week. I'm going to scroll on my feed. I just want to be able to recognize you guys and just amazing that you've been doing that. So let us know. High five. Yep. I see them coming through. That so many of you have been here all week. Scott Belair has been here, and Tuesday. Hey, Tuesday, you've been here. Joyce, Trevor, Sherry, Holly, lots of folks. I can't keep up with them all. Ashley, it's just amazing. It is so fun. I know I've started to say it later in the week, but this has just been like getting together with community. And I don't get to get in the chat, but I've had fun watching you guys talk and getting to take part as we're talking here. And I really feel like this has been community building this week. So much fun. And if you haven't made it, don't worry about it. You can still see them all. We've got replays. Of course, the link will come out tomorrow in the email. You'll have all of them. You can check it out. They'll be up for a few days. And you all know the drill if you've been here, but if you haven't, I will be letting you know how you can own this summit as well. But we got a little bit of housekeeping to take care of, and then we are going to talk about building your herbal medicine cabinet. More and more people are looking for ways to kick big pharma out of their medicine cabinet while still having remedies they need on hand. And hey, I'm not against medicine. We need the medical community that we have, and we need some of those things, but we're a little too dependent on it. And there are a lot of resources that Dr. Patrick Jones is going to share with us that we can take control of some of this and have some of our own control in our hands. And you can do that no matter where you're at. But before we get to that, I got to do housekeeping here. Of course, we're going to have some great giveaways. STS hat, I'll look for them to drop me a name for that. I've been able to do one of those every time. That's been a lot of fun. We're going to do an STS lifetime membership. We're going to give you another opportunity to win Joel Salatin's new book, which is just like hot steaming off the press. And after talking to him the other day, I was able to get us some of those to give away to you. And we're going to give you an herbal respiratory kit that Doc Jones has put together. So we're going to give you one of those as well. Fun stuff. That hat, while we're on it, is going to Michael Rivard. Michael Rivard, you have won this Traditional Skills hat. I hope you enjoy it. And make sure and email us, hello@schooloftraditionalskills.com to win that. Moderators, if you can drop that up on the screen, that would be great. That is Michael Rivard. Thank you very much. And hey, I need to talk about our sponsor. Harvest Right is our sponsor for the day and one of our main sponsors that has helped bring this event to you guys, and very thankful for them. And they're playing a key role in modern homesteading for some of us, in preservation. And they spent a lot of years creating this product, and every element, it's been designed, engineered, tested in their manufacturing facility in the USA. They're not only innovative, but they're built to last, and they're a product that you can trust to preserve the foods you and your family love for years to come. We have 2 of them. When Harvest Right approached us, I was kind of like, I don't know, it's expensive, and I just don't know. But it's been great. So I want to encourage you guys to check them out. I'm sure there's a link down below. So make sure and go check that out as well. We gave away one in the last session with Sally, and that was very, very cool. So there you go. With all that housekeeping out of the way, because of this topic, I have to give you a disclaimer. This class is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as professional advice for medical diagnosis or treatment or as a substitute for medical advice of a physician. The School of Traditional Skills will not be liable for any direct, indirect, consequential, special, exemplary, or other damages arising from information provided in this class. In other words, just use some plain old good judgment and seek professional help if you need it. Sorry to have to go through that, but this is the world we live in. And I am excited, though, to move on with things here and talk about some real practical solutions. Dr. Patrick Jones is a clinical herbalist, practicing veterinarian, and a traditional naturopath. He knows the power of herbs to heal. He treats both his human and animal patients with safe, effective herbs and will show you how you can do the same for your family. In fact, he says that when treating his animal patients in the emergency room, he often reaches for herbs alongside and sometimes in lieu of pharmaceuticals. And he has witnessed again and again and again the power of herbs to help people. I got a critter bugging me, sorry. In his naturopathic and clinical herbalist practice, he often treats minor injuries and colds and flus with safe, gentle, effective herbal remedies, and he loves to share his knowledge with others. Tonight, with cold and flu season right around the corner, he's going to tell us how to get our herbal medicine cabinet ready. Welcome, Doc. How you doing?
We're doing really well. Had been a good summer down here in southern Idaho and trying to keep out of trouble.
That's good. That's a hard thing for you to do, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, well, we were down there with you in May, and of course, and we got to see you up here in northern Idaho at the Modern Homesteading Conference in June.
Yeah, that was
what have you been up to since then?
Well, we did a workshop last week on trauma and emergency care and what you do until the ambulance comes, or what do you do if it's not coming. I did an in-house workshop. Been putting some new lessons up on the school all the time, and growing herbs and weeding flower beds and doing all kinds of herbal medicine stuff.
Cool.
The weeds are what I want,
Right. Yeah. Don't get rid of those weeds. We need them. Yeah, I imagine you guys doing a lot of harvesting right now?
Yeah, well, we're kind of done with a lot of it. Some of it we'll just start up with here soon, some of the root stuff, but yeah, it's been a good year.
Good. So before we get into some of just the details of building a medicine herbal cabinet, I'd love to talk about the why a little bit, and why you do what you do, and why we want to encourage people to think a little bit differently about their medicine cabinets and thinking about turning to herbs.
Yeah, so why do it? That's a really great question. That's a really important question. And there's several really good reasons. The first and foremost is that, as a practitioner for years and years with people and animals, I've seen firsthand that the herbs often just work better. I mean, they're very, very effective. Very, very rarely do you have any kind of side effect. And they have a much broader impact on the body to heal itself. If you give the body what it needs, it'll fix itself. It's a pretty clever system. So just from an efficacy standpoint, it's a no-brainer. Also from a financial standpoint, it's much less expensive to grow and use medicinal plants than it is to use pharmaceuticals. And from as a blessing, honestly, to the medical profession. We are in a situation where the medical profession is completely overloaded And a lot of the stuff they're overloaded with is simple stuff that we ought to be dealing with at home anyway. Those guys are extraordinarily intelligent, trained guys. Let's let them work on the guy that got run over by a tractor. Let's not bother them with stuff we can fix with weeds in our backyard. And so I think it's just good on a lot of levels. Accessibility, if you live somewhere where medical attention's far away or hard to get to, if you're out camping or hunting or hiking and something happens, you're completely surrounded by medicinal plants, no matter where you go. And so just access, availability, using things the body's designed to use. We've been processing plants for a really long time. When we take a pharmaceutical, our body says, oh, what the heck is that? And how do I get rid of it? And what do I do with it? Oh, it's sort of like that plant. I'll do that. Right. Mm-hmm. But it's just a much more natural, organic, healthy system. And our bodies respond, in my experience, very, very well to those kinds of natural interventions.
Yeah, I've never really thought about that from the angle of just putting a little relief on the medical system. Most of us understand how long it takes if we go to a modern emergency room to get in there. And a lot of times it's just teeny little issues. And so some of this is just taking care of, taking back control of some simple basic first aid or dealing with flu things that just, why waste the time and clog up the system when we can do it ourselves? What I hear you saying.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, if we would take care of our bodies, by eating stuff we grow ourselves and by having herbal medicine just be, part of the everyday thing, Hippocrates said, let your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food. If we were giving our bodies what they needed all the time, we'd have a much lower incidence of health problems anyway.
You know what? I love it in these talks when things can be less expensive, people can save money, and they do better. It works better, is what you were saying, right? It works better and it costs less. That's just that's something to jump up and down and holler about. Super exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was, we had that workshop last weekend, and every time I do that, all kinds of people come up and say, oh, holy cow, I had this happen and I did this, and I had this happen and I did that, and I didn't have to go to the doctor or the ER or anything. And I saved tons of money, just from a financial standpoint, having some self-sufficiency and an ability to deal with things is a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what a lot of people here are after, and looking not just for skills, but confirmation that they can take back some of this control wherever they're at. And we have a lot of people here that are acreage and are doing the homesteading life, and they want to learn this, but there's a lot of people that maybe don't have as much space or time, but they really want to be able to take back some control in some of these areas. And this is an exciting one because folks really can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, they really can.
So talk about what kind of herbs. Do you have to go have a big old large herb garden and grow a lot of exotic things to kind of take care of some basics in your house and cover some of the basic things that you're going to deal with from day to day and week to week?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, we grew the property that I left a couple of years ago. We were probably only using about a half an acre to grow stuff, and we had 150 species of plants.
Well, and of course you're growing this for a lot of other people as well, not just for yourself.
Right. But all the landscaping was medicinal. Every tree, every bush, every flower, everything was medicinal. Everything had a purpose. But also, you don't need 150 species. If you really knew 10 or 15 species, you could solve all kinds of problems. I mean, really a lot of problems. I'm a clinical herbalist that does weird cases on all kinds of species all day, every day. And I could do everything I'm doing with 30 or 40, And so for a regular family, if you got a little garden plot or a few, whatever you can do, if you got a couple of pots on your patio and, on your balcony in New York City, whatever you got, do what you can. But it doesn't take a huge number of herbs to solve problems. A lot of these herbs do a lot of different things, and can be used for a lot of different applications.
Yeah. What are, and keep close to the mic. I'm still seeing in the comments, either I'm too loud or you're too quiet. We'll figure it out.
All right,
Um,
there we go.
yeah. So give us 5 to 10 herbs that are maybe the most common and growable for people in, say, the majority of the United States. I mean, we got a lot of different climates, but I know
Sure.
there's at least a handful to a dozen that people could say grow themselves.
Yeah. So, and just as a shameless commercial plug, I have 2 books, The Homegrown Herbalist and The Homegrown Herbalist Guide to Medicinal Weeds. And every plant in those books will grow about anywhere, except Brigham tea. But everybody else in either of those books is everywhere. So if you want sort of a bunch to start with. But, if I was going to have 10 plants that are easy to grow, calendula is a rock star. It's antibiotic, it's anti-inflammatory, accelerates healing, it's antiviral against herpes viruses. So calendula is great. The flowers, the medicine, they're really cute and pretty in your flower beds. I'd have an elderberry bush for respiratory stuff. I'd probably have some mullein. That's easy to grow. Plantain's easy to grow. Crampbark's easy to grow. Willow's easy to grow. I mean, they're comfrey, lemon balm. I'd have cayenne pepper growing. I'd have burdock. I'd have some nettles. How many is that? And you know what? I could do 10 others that were completely different that were just as good to grow. You know what I mean?
Well, people love the list. They love to hear what you know.
Yeah.
So all of those I'm familiar with, and I know we can grow in North Idaho.
Yeah, and you guys are doing a fabulous job. All you folks go to Homesteading Families YouTube video. They have one of Carolyn's herb garden, and it's just a very modest-sized little garden, and she's growing a ton of stuff. Really a lot of stuff for your family. I mean, it's not something that you need 10 acres to do.
Oh no, not at all. You can do this in a small yard and make it decorative, even if you're in one of those HOAs that's not very nice to you about growing stuff. They won't even know. They won't even know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, let's talk a little bit about. So those are some herbs that just about anybody could grow. What are some of the forms that people at home can get those into? And we'll talk maybe a little bit about how in a bit, but what are some of the key forms that people are going to want to get the herbs into to make them usable?
Okay. Well, there's lots of different ways to take herbs. And honestly, it doesn't matter very much how you do it. Once the herbs get into your body, they start doing their job. If you take a bus to work or a camel to work or a helicopter to work, you still get to work, and you get to work when you get to work, right? And the herbs are the same way. So you can in most cases, you can just use the plants themselves. Most herb companies sell powdered herbs, and those can be taken just, throw it in a little smoothie, throw it in a little juice. You can do that. Or you can make a tea out of it, and you can make a tea out of fresh plants out of your backyard too, for that matter. You can also make tinctures, which are alcohol-based, which have a vastly better shelf life, and they act a little quicker. You can put them in capsules. I'm not a big fan of capsules very often. For some things, they're fine. For other things, they're not ideal. But having the stuff on hand and accessible really makes a big difference. And whether that's on hand in your cupboard or on hand in your garden, if they're there, they're there.
Yeah. So let's just kind of run through some of these. So fresh herbs, using herbs just freshly picked. What are some kind of the key reasons you would use some herbs that way, and maybe some of the herbs?
Fresh herbs might be a little bit more potent in some cases. In some cases, it doesn't matter at all. For the most part, dry herbs are more than adequately potent for my use. I don't have an issue with it. When I make tinctures, I dry everything so that I'm absolutely sure what moisture levels are,
Mm-hmm.
for the extraction and the longevity, the shelf life. But fresh herbs are great. I mean, we had a little kid, a grandbaby of mine, got entangled with a wasp's nest about 2 weeks ago.
Ouch.
And, we had some plantain growing out in the garden, and we said to her brother, who's, I don't know, 8 or 9, will he go get some plantain leaves? And he knew what it was and where it was and what it was for. Mm-hmm. Went out and we just chewed them up and put them on her, and it took those stings right away. We also took tincture while he was out getting the plantain leaves. I have a formula called Venom and Sting, which has got plantain in it. And we put that on, and, some of them we did the tincture, some we did the spit poultice that chewed up the leaves and put it on with a Band-Aid. And they both worked great. Within a couple of minutes, all those stings were gone. She didn't have any pain at all anymore. What would her life have been like for a week if we hadn't had those plants and didn't know what to do with them?
Yeah.
So.
What about things like poultices for other type of injuries?
So poultices are great. I for many, many years used poultices on wounds. And if you want to see some really crazy wound cases, go to homegrownherbalist.com and the blog, and there's some, pictures and cases I've done over the years with poultices. But poultices are great, and you can do that either with fresh plants, grind them up and put them on, or you can take the dry powder and mix it with some water and put it on. Honestly, I almost never use poultices anymore. More often than not, I'm just going to use a tincture for wound management, and I'll dilute that tincture with a little water so it doesn't sting. You can't put alcohol on an open wound. That hurts. But almost exclusively nowadays, if I'm managing a serious wound, I'm putting a teaspoon of tincture in 2 ounces of water and just spraying it frequently, and it saves you all the trouble of making and managing the poultice. And that tincture can be in your cupboard for years and years and never go bad. So it's handy. If you get a wound in December and you don't have the plants you need, or didn't think of one you should have thought of, having that bottle of tincture in your cupboard is pretty handy,
Yeah.
And that's another nice thing about tinctures. The shelf life is extraordinary on them. And so you can have it on hand all the time. But yeah, poultices are great. The only place I still use poultices a lot is on puncture wounds, because they have some drawing power to pull stuff out sometimes of puncture wounds. But for most other wounds anymore, I'm using diluted tinctures and having good success with that.
Okay. So, let's talk about tinctures. I think you refer to those a lot. Is that something that's easy for folks to make at home? Making their own tinctures.
Yeah, absolutely. And we go over that in both those classes. If you're not in the school, go look at that. School of Traditional Skills, the first aid one and the respiratory one, we talk about how to make a tincture. But it's basically just an alcohol extract of the herb. And we're using vodka. And the reason we use vodka is it's the right proof and it's cheap, right? If somebody wanted to use something more expensive, they could, but it's a chemical experiment, not a social one. So you don't have to buy anything good. As long as it's 80 or 100 proof. And then if you're using dry herbs, I'll usually do a 1-to-5 ratio by weight. So if I had, an ounce of herbs, I would use 5 ounces weight, not volume, of vodka, 5 grams of herb, 1 gram of herbs, 5 grams of vodka. And, mix them together and let it sit for a week or two and strain it and bottle it, and you're all set. And like I say, the shelf life's really good. The alcohol in that vodka has some really important properties that herbalists like. One is it's a phenomenal solvent. It really pulls all the chemistry out of those plants, number one. And the other is it's a really good preservative. And the third one is it's very penetrating. It acts very quickly. You'll probably never swallow an alcohol tincture. It'll probably be all absorbed before it ever gets to your stomach. And they're that fast. So for emergencies and things, for shock, for asthma, for bleeding, something that I want to fix right now, and I don't want to make a tea, a tincture is really fast.
talk to us about glycerin a little bit. There are some people that, because they don't drink alcohol, they also are concerned about making a tincture out of alcohol.
Sure.
And maybe to, tell us why it's really not an issue, but two, for those people that are, want to go to glycerin, just what are the pros, cons, whatnot?
So pros and cons of glycerin. Glycerin tastes better than vodka. Uh, it's got a nice, sweet, pleasant taste. Cons are that glycerin will grow bacteria, and it doesn't have nearly the extractive power to pull the chemistry out that vodka does. Doesn't have nearly the shelf life that vodka does. And like I said, it'll grow bacteria. So if you drink it out of the bottle, that bottle's contaminated and it'll be growing who knows what, So if you're using a glycerite, pour it into a spoon and take it and then put it back in the fridge. So for long-term shelf stability, if the apocalypse came, your glycerin stuff will be good for 6 months. Your tinctures will be good for 20 years, So which one do you
That's a
want to
big
have?
difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. And as far as, abstaining from alcohol, I don't drink at all. I have religious reasons not to drink, and, let alone the other great reasons not to drink. But, if you belong to a religious faith that thinks it's okay for your doctor to give you Demerol or Percocet or hydrocodone or to use anesthesia on you, I think it's probably okay to take, 30 drops of echinacea tincture when you have a cold. It's not in any way, addictive or disruptive or impeding your judgment or all the other things we don't like about getting drunk. If a person drank enough tincture from an herb to make it intoxicating, that would be a hugely high, probably dangerous dose of the herb,
Yeah.
And so if it's for medical purposes, it's for medical purposes, and I understand that people don't, they're a little hesitant about, buying alcohol and going into liquor stores and stuff. And I understand that. That's hard. But, I do a lot of medicine making workshops, and sometimes I'll get an email from somebody who says, how do you buy vodka? I said, just give the man money. It's kind of like buying bananas. You give him some money, he gives you some stuff. It's pretty easy. But I understand.
Yeah. It's a challenging for some people. Another challenge.
Honestly, I wouldn't make the glycerite. I would just take the powdered herbs, throw them in your morning smoothie, and do it that way. The powdered herbs have a much longer shelf life, and they're just as effective, and they won't run the risk of making you sick if you contaminate the bottle.
So I think what you're saying is, if you're not going to make the tincture with vodka, you're probably better just to mix the powdered herbs in.
I would, or make a tea, or put the powdered herbs on your peanut butter sandwich. You take them however you want. But glycerites are a lot of work for very little benefit, in my opinion.
A plantain peanut butter sandwich. Now, watch out for a cayenne peanut butter sandwich. That might
yeah. You want to be a little careful because they don't all taste good.
Hey, that's one way to get it into the kids, though. And that was definitely somebody else's another concern, kind of all on the same lines, but some other folks had concerns about their children.
Yeah.
Some
tinctures taste awful. They really do. And with some teas too. And some herbs are just bad. But whenever I do a tincture, some people just, throw it right in their mouth and down the hatch, and that's tough. I always put it in a little juice or a little water. And I mean a little, because you got to drink all of it.
Right.
And then wash it down with more of something nice, But, something I've done with little kids is there's a product, there's a company called Barleans, Barleans, and they make these fatty acid products. They're like, it's sort of like a syrup, but they're called Barleans Omega. Just go on Amazon or wherever, you'll find them. Mm-hmm. And they taste really good. They're fruit flavored and they're really sweet and nice. And you can hide about any tincture in that for a little kid. Plus he's getting his omega-3s and omega-6s, and that's good too. But, yep.
Yeah.
Or put them in some yogurt, put them in some applesauce. You can hide stuff.
A lot of good vehicles here.
Yep.
A lot of good vehicles. Let's see here. let's talk about cold and flu season. I don't know. It seems perennial at this point to me, but traditionally we're getting ready to come upon cold and flu season in whatever season. And first of all, what should people have on hand to try to keep from getting sick in the first place? Or is there prevention here that we can talk about? Besides, good health, and maybe you want to speak to that as well, just taking care of yourself, but like herbally combined with good health, what do you recommend for prevention?
So there's two ways to intervene or to prevent an illness. One is to stimulate your immune system, and one is to interfere with the virus directly, with an antiviral herb. And there are a lot of antiviral herbs. So immune stimulating herbs like echinacea, astragalus, olive leaf are great. Another one, and I wouldn't take those long term all the time. But if you thought you were at risk, if you're having a stressful week, or if you've been on an airplane, things like that, I would certainly do some of those herbs. Elderberry is also great. It has some immune stimulating and some antiviral properties, and some anti-inflammatory properties. It's got all kinds of things in it. And that's one you can take just sort of as a regular preventive. And that's one you can use on little kids as a regular preventive. You make some elderberry syrup, and just give them a spoonful of that on their way out the door to school every day, and that can help. And we talked about in the respiratory lesson, we make that. We'll show you how to make that elderberry syrup. But that tastes great, and that's a good way to get herbs into kids. And then if I thought something serious was headed my way, I would take, for a viral respiratory infection, my first grab is probably pine needle or sweet wormwood as an antiviral. Those are really, really good. And I'm talking about any kind of pine tree.
This is for warding it off, right? Before you got it, trying to.
Well, both, because it's pine needle and sweet wormwood both. Pine needle, anybody in the Pinus genus. And sweet wormwood is Artemisia annua. Not all the other Artemisias are as good. Sweet wormwood is the one you want. But both of those have functions that inhibit the virus from attaching to your cells at all in the first place. And they also, once it gets in, if it does, inhibit viral replication. And so they're actually, slowing down that virus production. So your symptoms are going to be lower. If you get it all, the length of your illness is going to be shorter. I've had some amazing results with that. And so, I have a formula, I call it cold away. But, if I'm coming down with a cold, I'll go out to the yard and grab a handful of elderberries or elder leaves if it's for an adult, a handful of peppermint to make it taste good, and it's got some good stimulating properties too. Handful of echinacea, handful of yarrow. I mean, they're all growing right together, and make a tea and drink that all day for a couple of days. And 9 times out of 10, you don't get it at all. That's how good the herbs are. But if it's more serious, I'm going to do, some immunity support. And I've got a formula for that, but we talked about that in the respiratory lesson too. All those herbs that you can use for that. Things like garlic, echinacea, olive leaf. There's a lot of herbs that stimulate immunity, that activate white blood cells and really get things going. So that's a good idea too, to hit it from both angles. But if you don't have a pine tree growing in your yard, go buy one and stick it in the ground, because that's a phenomenal respiratory medicine. Also a tremendous source of vitamin C. Don't take it if you're pregnant. Don't take it if you're nursing, but anybody else, boy, pine needle's great.
So dealing with, trying to keep the discussion right now to pre-cold flu, you haven't got anything yet. You're trying to ward it off. You're trying to build up your immunity. Do you take things once a day, twice a day, 10 times a day? How do you approach that with herbs?
Yeah, that's a great question. Herbs are, my philosophy on herbs and sort of the drum I beat all the time is that if you want herbs to be really effective, you take them early, often, and after. Okay. And so the minute I think I'm coming down with something, the minute I think I'm exposed to somebody that's coming down with something, I'm going to get on the herbs. And if I'm trying to prevent something, or if I'm trying to treat an acute, something's starting, I'm going to be taking those 3 or 4 times a day. If it's a maintenance thing, if I'm taking herbs for my arthritis or my blood pressure or whatever, long-term things, that's probably going to be twice a day, maybe 3 times a day. But if it's an active, serious thing, I might go every 3 hours, And the margins of safety on these plants are wide enough that that's not an issue at all. I'm not going to do that long term all my life, but I'll do it for a week or 2 while I'm sick,
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that's important for people to know, because we're in a pill popping age. You take one in the morning, maybe one at the night. A lot of times just one. And so I've heard a lot of people say, well, I tried this, I tried echinacea, I tried elderberry, this, that, it didn't work. And they're not really realizing that you've got to use it a little bit differently.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're used to taking a pill that you do once a day, maybe twice a day. But that's not how herbs work. You need to be taking them at least twice, and for something acute, 3 or 4 or 5 times a day is probably what you need to be doing. Yeah. And then you start early, you take them often, high frequency, and then after is, you take them for a couple of days after you think you're better, to keep giving your body what it needs to rebuild and not relapse, So that's really the 3 keys to be successful with it.
Yeah. So let's talk about flus and colds, and maybe we need to differentiate some of this out. But respiratory issues, what are must-haves on hand for respiratory to get you through the respiratory issue and over it? Like just giving some peoples for attacking that, and we'll go through a few different things and then bring it all together.
Sure. So for my respiratory medicine cabinet, I would want to have some elderberry in there. I would want to have some pine needle and some Artemisia annua, the sweet wormwood. For prevention and for fighting the virus. I'd want some echinacea for stimulating immunity. I would probably then look at symptoms of respiratory stuff. I would want something for coughs, like wild cherry bark, or mullein is a good cough suppressant. I would want something for an expectorant to get stuff out of my lungs. And so elecampane is good for that. Gumweed is great for that. I would want something maybe to soothe my respiratory system, soothe my sore throats. Marshmallow's probably the rock star for that one. What else happens when you're sick? Oh, antihistamine herbs. If you got runny noses and sneezy stuff, if it's a head cold, I'm going to want some Brigham tea or some nettles for that. If you have fevers, maybe some willow bark, maybe some yarrow. Those are both good for fevers. They break fevers in different ways, and we go into that in that respiratory class too. That's a good thing to know about. But yeah, that's kind of the guys I'd have. I'd probably also have some grape leaf. Grape leaf is really important, really rarely, for cytokine storms. So if you're getting a serious respiratory crash from a cytokine storm, sometimes these influenzas and coronaviruses can stimulate the immune system so much, the response is so huge that people actually drown in their own immune response. That's what killed most of the people in Spanish flu. It wasn't little old ladies dying and little kids. It was young, healthy adults in their prime of life because they had really good immune systems and they were drowning in their immune response. And COVID-19 does that. Some of the influenzas do that sometimes. And so if you're having a really acute, alarming feeling of fluid filling up your lungs all of a sudden, grape leaf is great for shutting that off. And I've had some amazing phone calls and emails from folks that really thought they were in real trouble and were headed to the ER, took some grape leaf while they jumped in the car, and by the time they got to the ER, they were all better,
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's pretty spectacular. It's got a chemical in it called resveratrol that's super anti-inflammatory, super suppressive of cytokines. And anyway, that's another one I'd have.
What about coughs?
So coughs, I like mullein for coughs. I like wild cherry bark, and it's the inner bark of the wild cherry. Whenever we say bark in herbal medicine, we almost always mean the inner bark, the cambium, the green inner bark. Yeah, wild cherry, mullein. You can also use antispasmodic herbs like cramp bark or lobelia for a cough. Sometimes that'll relax the muscles. It works in a different way, but that can be beneficial for coughs too. Sometimes you shouldn't stop that cough. There's two kinds of coughs. If it's a dry cough that's just keeping you up all night and not producing any mucus, then yes, turn that off. Take some wild cherry bark and shut that off, or some mullein. If it's a productive wet cough and you're getting a lot of mucus, that's what that cough's doing, is trying to clean your lungs out. And you ought to let it do that. Now, when it gets to be, 9 o'clock at night and you're tired of coughing all day and you want some sleep, take a cough suppressant. But make sure you take an expectorant with it. So take your wild cherry bark or your mullein, but take some elecampane or some gumweed with it to help the cough, help the mucus get out, right? So, yeah, I mean, sometimes, you got to sleep, you got to rest, and we get real tired of coughing. But if the cough's doing some good work, it might be better to just give yourself an expectorant like elecampane, like gumweed, to help the cough get the stuff out, rather than taking cough suppressant herbs like, wild cherry bark or mullein, some of those guys, and turning off your body's attempt to clean itself out.
Yeah. Let's talk about the grape leaf. That's generating a lot of energy because that's one, I think people are not quite as familiar with any kind of grape leaf. And how do you use that? Take it.
Yeah. So, any kind of grape leaf. Vitis, V-I-T-I-S, is the genus of grapes that we eat. They say that the darker the grape, the stronger the leaf, but I haven't. I mean, I have white grapes and I have dark purple grapes and all kinds of grapes, and I've used leaves from all of them. I've never noticed any difference. So I guess if I was going to pick one and didn't have any, I'd get a dark grape, But the leaf's the medicine. Pick them in the spring. They're a little bit better before it makes the grapes, but when they're fully mature. Mm-hmm. But any herb, almost any herb, the dosing for an adult of a dried powdered herb is going to be, a rounded teaspoon or two for an adult. And if you have a kid, just do it by size. Is he half an adult? Is he a quarter of an adult? And just give him half a teaspoon or a quarter teaspoon. And I'm going to do that, like I said, if I'm fighting something serious, I'm going to do that, several times a day.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're talking grape leaf, to clarify, you guys, not Oregon grape.
Not Oregon grape.
Yeah.
No. And I love Oregon grape. That's a great herb too. That's a great herb for fevers. It's a great antibiotic. It's great for digestive. And we could talk for 2 hours about Oregon grape. In fact, my YouTube channel has a 2-hour video on barberry and Oregon grape. Go, if you're sleepy after this, you can go watch that for 2 hours. It'll knock you right out. But Oregon grape's a completely different plant. That's not a grape at all. It's Mahonia is the genus. But I'm talking about regular grapes that people make wine out of, and raisins and things like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot here a little bit because we covered a lot of herbs. If somebody's just going to go stock up, they're going to go buy some herbs from you or whoever, and, they're on a budget. They just want to have the top, 3 to 6 herbs that they need to have in their cabinet to deal with colds and flus this season. They just want to, they want to get it quick and have it down. I mean, there's a lot to learn, but just to narrow it down a little bit, what should they go get to start this journey?
Well, the herbs we rattled off at the beginning would be great. I would have, it kind of depends, Josh, on what their issues are. If I had somebody that had asthma, I'd have some cramp bark or some lobelia. If I had somebody that had a lot of digestive problems, I'd make sure I had some marshmallow. But if I had somebody that had lots of allergies, I'd be sure that I had nettles and brigham tea. So it kind of depends what their issues are.
Okay.
Overall, for about everything, the ones we rattled off at the beginning would be good. I have a couple of little kits at the shop. One's called the 10 plants. I don't know, what's it? 10 plants that can change your life kit or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another one that's just a little travel and first aid kit. Go, and you don't even have to buy one. Just go to the website and see what's on there. homegrownherbalist.com. See what those herbs are. I have a video on the YouTube channel called 10 Plants That Can Change Your Life. I have one called Herbal First Aid that are short. That would give you a lot of good ideas. But yeah, I would have calendula, I'd have plantain, I'd have comfrey, I'd have gumweed, I'd have an elderberry bush. Some of the things we talked about early on.
Yeah, good. So moving on, so you're learning to deal with colds and flus and some of these things naturally with herbal medicines, building up your cabinet. How do you know when you do need to go see the doctor? We're very much in favor here of lessening those trips to the doctor just because you got a runny nose or a sinus infection. But there are times where you need to know, you need to say, okay, it's time to move on. How do people find balance in that and make that call?
Well, with respiratory infections, if people aren't oxygenating well enough, they need to go to the ER right now. If they're not breathing well, if they're short of breath, if they're not getting the oxygen levels they need, then you need to get on oxygen, and go to a facility that can do that for you. And they'll have some other more dramatic pharmaceutical interventions for opening things up. If what you're doing isn't working, go get some medical attention.
How do you decide that? How do you decide? How long do you go? How do you decide
most of these viruses take a week or two to do their thing, and be gone. And then you feel lousy for a week or two after that with the serious ones. As long as the person is not getting worse, as long as they're either on a plateau or improving, I'd keep at it. If they're getting markedly worse, I'd get in the car and go do something about it. But it's hard to quantify that.
Yeah.
You'll know if you're in trouble, you'll know. And if you don't know, you're in trouble, go to the doctor,
Yeah.
I guess. So.
What about sinus issues for a minute while we're here? That's involved in any of these things, and sometimes people have chronic sinus issues, and I see a lot of questions. And we're going to answer questions, you guys, in a little bit. We'll get to as many as we can, but that's one I see coming across the feed quite a bit, so we can talk about it here.
So sinus issues, one of my favorite herbs for sinus issues is cayenne pepper. You just put a little bit of cayenne pepper and a little bit of water and put it in your mouth and keep it in there as long as you can stand it. And oftentimes that will markedly drain things. The other thing that can really help sinuses is if there's any allergic component that can cause some inflammation and, make things worse. So nettle leaf is really good for that. Brigham tea is really good for that. Just for, resolving the allergic side of it. Sometimes some of the expectorant herbs can help with sinus issues because they decrease the viscosity, the thickness of the mucus, which loosens things up. So herbs like elecampane, herbs like gumweed sometimes can help with sinuses. But my first grab is probably going to be the cayenne and the antihistamine guys. Okay. And if it's an infection, well, now we got to deal with that. So I'm going to do some echinacea. I'm going to do some olive leaf or some other immune stimulating plants. I'm going to do some antibiotic plants, maybe some calendula, maybe some garlic, maybe some, gumweed's a good antibiotic too. But we're going to fight the infection too. That's another piece of the puzzle sometimes for some of these guys.
Yeah. What about garlic? That hasn't come up a whole lot in your list here, and a lot of people are chattering about garlic, and a lot of people use garlic. Where does that fit in for you into a natural regime?
Garlic is a rock star medicinally. It's just it does about everything. I mean, it's antibiotic, it's antifungal, it's antiviral. It's anti-cancer. It lowers your cholesterol. I mean, it does everything. Garlic's really, really fantastic. It has to be raw garlic, or dry powder is okay, or a tincture is okay, but don't cook it. If you heat it up, you kill it. Garlic's an astoundingly good herb, and if you only had one herb for antibacterial and antiviral and immune stimulating and all the other things it does, that'd be an awfully good choice. I have no problem with that at all.
How do you, being you want to generally take it raw, of course, it's powerful in your mouth, right?
Yeah.
How do you recommend getting that down? I mean, some of us can take it, but a lot of people, that's a tough one for like honey. I mean, honey's obviously a common delivery method.
Garlic honeys are great. That's right. Mixing it with other things is great. But sometimes you just got to choke it down and get it down, The powder's a little less intense than the fresh garlic and works about as well. So
bite the garlic bullet, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's also, it's really great birth control. If you eat enough of it, she won't get anywhere near you. So
yeah, I see people talking about eating whole cloves, and some of us can do that. I can handle stuff pretty hot, but even that one for me is tough. I knew a guy, construction, years and years and years ago. He lived by garlic, and he was a plumber. And when you walked into the house, you knew he was there. Wherever he was at, you knew he was there. He never missed a day of work. He never got sick. He just always kind of sat by himself for lunch. We had to sit 20 feet away from him, but it worked.
That's right. It'll actually start coming out of your skin. It's not just your breath either. It's very powerful stuff.
No, this was definitely him. Yeah. You knew when he was sweating more. It was hot.
Yeah. Garlic is phenomenal for high blood pressure too. I mean, it's an amazing herb. We just did a big lesson on hypertension and high blood pressure on the school, and garlic's a rock star for that too. So really great plant.
There you go. And that's one that any of you can grow. I mean,
easy.
So easy to grow and low maintenance. Yep. And of course, obviously it's awesome culinary wise as well. Let's talk a little bit about first aid and getting some components into the medicine cabinet for first aid uses. If 1 to 3 herbs, if one is too few to just call out your one must have, give us about 3 herbs. If you can, and maybe you got to say, hey, you need to have 5 to have a well-rounded cabinet to get started. But what are the herbs that you got to have for the key issues?
Well, I've probably saved more lives more dramatically with cayenne than I have with all the other herbs combined. But those are serious cases. Those are shock. Those are, dogs that have been hit by a car, anesthesia reactions, things that are going into shock and they're going to die. I've turned those around all the time with cayenne. I mean, it really will pull somebody out of a problem. It's also good for bleeding. It's also a good expectorant for respiratory stuff to get goobers out of your lung. It's also good for clearing your sinuses. It's a really, really good plant, and it does a dozen other things too. So for emergency life saving, if I could only have one thing, that's what I'd have. You can use it internally or topically for bleeding. So cayenne's good. Calendula's great for first aid things. It's a good antibiotic. It's a good anti-inflammatory. It helps healing, accelerates healing a little bit. I'd have that one. I would have some plantain. Plantain's great for venomous bites and stings. Topically, it's also good for getting poisons out of the blood internally. I've treated some pretty serious blood poisoning cases with plantain and had great results with really severely, life-threateningly dangerous infected wounds, topically and internally. And I'm not recommending anybody do that, but, that's what I do all day with herbs. What else? Comfrey for accelerating the healing.
Yeah.
That'd be a great one. Marshmallow is great for so many things. I mean, if I only had 5 herbs, marshmallow would be on that list. Soothes about any tissue you got. Really good for the gut. Really good for irritated bronchi if you've been coughing all week. Good for bladder infections. Good for burns. Good for wounds. Really a phenomenal plant. But yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And like I said before, I can give you the top 5 very best ones, and then I could give you 5 more that'd be just as good. I mean, these plants are really remarkable.
Well, and that's why we have a class on first
A lot
aid
of overlap.
that Doc Jones did that can really help you hone this in, especially when you're getting going, because it can be nearly information overload sometimes for people getting going, because there are so many great options, and that's why we have the classes. But let's talk about something we haven't done a class with you on a little bit. And I mean, we are homesteaders after all, and most of us have animals of some sort. Is this effective for animals? I mean, obviously it is, just from your testimony, but what are some
charged? Yeah.
What are some things people can do regarding herbs and animals on the home level? Because most of us don't have a Doc Jones living in our neighborhood that we can call to treat our animals this way. So where are some places to get started, I guess, is what I'm getting after.
So basically, first of all, we have texts, that are thousands of years old. Some of the oldest written documents that humanity has are about medicine, and they're always, without exception, the oldest ones are about veterinary medicine, and it's herbal medicine. So people have been using herbs on animals forever. And the fact is that herb use in animals is very, very similar to herb use in humans. We're just not that different. There's a few little exceptions here and there, but very few. And, I use herbs on dogs and goats and chickens and cattle and sheep and cats and horses all the time in my practice. They're just not that different. The dosing's a little different, but if you're treating a horse or a cow that's an adult, I'm going to use a rounded tablespoon or 2 instead of a teaspoon. But other than that, other than dosing, everything else is very similar. The frequency is going to be the same depending on what you're doing. The herbs I use are almost always going to be the same. It's just not that complicated. I keep trying to tell people, in the school, we go system by system in the homegrown herbalist school, and we talk about the respiratory system and the digestive system and they say, well, what do I do with my sheep if he's got trouble with his lungs? I say, well, you do the same thing you do for your kid. It's just not that different. There are some specialty different things. Horses get colic, dogs get parvo. There's things they do that, have some significant impact that we don't get. But for the most part, I would just go with your gut. What do you know about people? Do it to your sheep. We have a kit on the website called the Pharmacy, FARAM. FAR, how do you spell farm? Pharmacy. Anyway, that's got all that stuff too. If stick it in the corner of your barn and you'll have everything you need, and there's directions and everything. But honestly, the only reason I do that kit instead of all the other kits I do is because they're bigger bags, because they're cows. Other than that, it's the same herbs, the same protocols. It's just not that different.
So you give tinctures. I just saw somebody was asking about tinctures for.
Yeah, you can give tinctures, you can give powders. You can use poultices. You can do wound sprays with your tincture. Whatever you do for yourself, 9 times out of 10, it'll work just fine on your goat.
Yeah. Yep. So not to take any business away from you, but as a veterinarian, what are 1 or 2 of the top things that people come to see you for that you treat herbally that they could just treat themselves at home?
Yeah. Lots of digestive things. Almost anything digestive can be treated herbally at home just fine. If you've got a dog that has a sensitive stomach, if you have a dog that has diarrhea, if you have a dog that has constipation. All those things are easy to fix with herbs. Venomous bites and stings. I treat rattlesnake bites in the vet clinic, and I don't ever use any pharmaceuticals on them. I just use herbs. I treat serious wounds all the time in the vet clinic. I don't use pharmaceuticals on them. I just use herbs on wounds. And I mean like grisly wounds, not just, oops, I got a paper cut. We're talking about really serious wounds. I just use herbs and they do great. And you can learn how to do those things. It's not rocket science to do any of this stuff. I mean, people that were banging rocks together to make their fires 1,000 years ago knew how to do this stuff, and the plants haven't changed. So it's very accessible, very easy to learn, very powerful, very important. I don't know about a lot of the stuff I treat in the vet clinic. I wouldn't do. It's the same as the medical profession. I mean, surgery, it's a really good idea to go to somebody that knows what the heck they're doing, and can knock you out to do it. Right. But most of the metabolic stuff, most of the infectious disease stuff, 9 times out of 10, I'm using herbs with whatever I'm doing, and probably 7 or 8 times out of 10, that's all I'm doing. I mean, it works really well. So
yeah. Well, this is a huge topic that we could explore for hours. Obviously, you've covered it tons in what you do, and we've created a couple classes that are great starting places for everybody. I'll tell you all more about that in a minute. We're going to do some Q&A. There's a lot of questions. We'll get to as many as we can here. But I do want to take a minute. I see people asking about replays and the summit, and so I want to take a few minutes to answer some questions there and invite you guys to own the summit and come be a part of the School of Traditional Skills. So if you enjoyed this session, if you've enjoyed this week, maybe this is your first session, I don't know. And if it is, you can check out some replays coming tomorrow. There will be a link coming out for you, or some of the emails that have gone out this week. They've got a link to all the replays. They're going to be available for free for a little while. We can't leave them up there forever, but they will be there. But you can own the summit. I'd love to be able to get that into your hands. I'd love to be able to give it to you, actually, so that you can own it. You can download it. You can keep it for yourself and come back to these sessions and catch the sessions you didn't miss, that you did miss, or catch the ones you didn't miss that you want to rewatch. With this, we're doing something really, really cool. We're providing a summit guide. This is a booklet that we're going to create, 100-page booklet that's going to kind of contain and summarize the summit. This is something you're going to be able to hold in your hands. That's going to have the recipes, the lists, like Doc's top. We'll synthesize it a little bit for you, and some of Doc's top herbs and how to use them, and information about every single session that you can go at a quick glance and learn the recipe, or get the how-to, or hear what they said about this thing or that thing, and get some of the quotes and the memorable moments, along with just being a beautiful picture book for the homesteading community and for our community. This is something not just that you can download, it's something that we are going to print and mail to you. I know we're all here online, and I love the online exchange. It's a place that we can gather and share information, whether it's free like the summit, whether it's the school, but I know we're also all people that like to have something tangible in our hands. And so that's something we wanted to do this year, is get something into your hands. And so if you take me up on this offer, this is something that we're going to send to you, along with that downloadable version of all the videos, so you can come back and watch them and be a part of the discussion, along with last year's summit as well. It was a very special event. It was the first one. It was very different than this one, and so it's got its own value. And seeing some of the instructors come in and get to talk about their class and about the subject matter in a little bit of a different way. Tons to learn there, great conversations. We're also going to make that downloadable, something that you can take with you and own. We always get those questions during this time. So that's something we want to do. And it's all yours free when you join the School of Traditional Skills with an annual membership. And if you join during the summit, and in fact, to get these things for free, you've got to join here during the summit to be able to own them and download them. You're going to get a huge discount. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the school here. The school is full of detailed classes like Doc Jones here. He has 2 of them with us. And the first one is a crash course on herbal first aid. And he takes you through learning a core set of herbs that you can have on hand and how to use them for different first aid situations. Some of this is just basic first aid. It's just a good first aid class and the things that you need to know and do to save you from going to the urgent care so much and getting stuck in those long waiting rooms and end up getting a cold or a flu or something while you're sitting in the waiting room. There's so many things that you can do at home, but Doc is teaching it in the context of using herbs along with basic first aid principles. This is a very, very valuable class. Anybody should know basic first aid. And here you can do it using herbs, which, as Doc says, often work better. They often work faster. So that's his first class. And check out what Savannah has to say about that class that she took with School of Traditional Skills. Thank you for the training with Doc Jones. I watched it with my 12-year-old daughter, and the knowledge came in very useful today when I was preparing dinner and sliced my hand. My daughter came over to help me doctor it up. I was very impressed with her quick action and calm demeanor. I was able to walk her through where everything was, and we stopped the bleeding with a poultice very quickly. I'm grateful to y'all for the training and that my daughter has the opportunity to learn things I'm just now learning in my 30s. Thanks for all you guys do to help us become the best homesteading versions of ourselves. That's Savannah. And, this is something about the classes I want to segue a little bit. While we're speaking, these classes are made for you as an adult. These classes are good for anybody. This is good for your homeschool curriculum. This is good for kids of any age that are able to understand the information. And in fact, whether they can understand the information or not, we have made all these classes so that you can always sit down. If you're wanting to learn and you've got your young ones with you, nothing's ever going to be said that is going to bother you. I promise you that. Whatever your beliefs are, whatever your personal opinions are about what's good for children, not good for children, there's nothing here that's ever going to bother your children or you. These are very, very family friendly and yet still very educational. Now, we also just released a second class with Doc on herbal cold and flu remedies. We wanted to get that ready for the fall season so that you can take control of, the cold and flu season yourself and deal with some of these things at home naturally in a lot of ways a more effective way. In fact, Doc is coming back in October to meet with our members and answer questions about that class. He walks you through 16 common herbs that you can grow for yourself or source very easily that will help you get past cold or flu season quickly without a lot of the nasty side effects. Let's look at what Jeannie has to say about that class, because that's been out for a little bit. My herb garden, as well as my stock of dried herbs, teas, and tinctures, has expanded dramatically due to Doc Jones's class on using medicinal herbs. We are grateful for all the work your team is doing to bring us content that is informative and useful and actually worth taking the time to watch. Jeannie, thank you. You just confirmed that we're hitting the mark. We're hitting our goal. This is the way all of the classes are prepared. And if you're not familiar with the school, this is a library of classes that's growing regularly. There are 19, 20 classes in there right now. We release one just about once a month. And they're all made just the way Jeannie is describing them. It's made to get you information quickly and concisely. They're not so short that things are getting left out, but they're not these big, giant, long master classes. We're not trying to make you an expert or a professional. We're also not trying to waste your time with just information for filler to make it look valuable. The goal is to get you in there, take a class on a subject, and get that subject under your control and get it doable and usable for you as quickly as possible so that you can start applying it to your life and you can move on to other skills and do less surfing the internet, less surfing around YouTube. And you can do that in your off time, not when you need to learn something. That's something that's very, very particular to what we're doing here at the school. On top of all that, you guys, we have a members only community. And this is where it really all comes together. And I would add, and I think even some of our members would add, that the community itself is as valuable as everything else and plenty valuable for the offer that we're making for you today. This is where like-minded people are coming together and learning together. You guys going through these classes, going through these lessons and learning skills together, where you've got people on the same journey. You've got people that are approaching the same thing, the same things, the same ways. And so whether you're taking the class next week, there's going to be somebody in there that took it last month, and they're going to be able to help you. There's going to be somebody else coming in that you're going to be able to help. And that's along with our moderators and other people that are in there in the community. You're able to chat, you're able to talk with people just kind of like a normal social feed. You're able to go explore different subjects and get in there and just have a great conversation with people that are learning like you are and are on the journey and going through it together. That's something that we all lack today that we're looking for. And my hope is that people will experience the school, they'll experience the community, and that will be a starting place. Not that the community, the online community, is the end all, but it's a place that will encourage you, that will inspire you. You will then take that knowledge and that confidence and take that out into your physical community and spread the knowledge with your friends and family and with people around you, in turn, and build physical community. That's really the goal, but this is a way to get there. One of the other really, really cool things that happens in the school and in the community is challenges. This is where people in the school come together and they learn together. We're doing in October an Herbal Cold and Flu Challenge right inside the community that goes along with Doc Jones' class. The last one that we did this summer was on compost. And you guys, we estimated that the school, through all its members, created around 400 tons of compost. Can you believe that? That's a bit of a guess, but with all the people that were involved and made compost, this was huge. This was a lot of life-giving soil. We want to see the same thing happen this fall. So this is a great opportunity to jump in here, where cold and flu season is getting ramped up, and we've got these great classes, and along with Doc and along with our community leaders and all your peers inside the community, you're going to go through and build up your herbal medicine cabinet together starting in October for members. One of the really other cool things we do that I'm just being reminded of is that in those challenges, we give prizes to people that stick it out. There's looks like this one's going to have a respiratory kit from Doc Jones's Homegrown Herbalist, along with an elderberry syrup kit. There's also resources in there for you to source the herbs if you need those, if you don't have them. This is a great time to get involved with the community on this subject alone. And if this is something you're interested in, I want to invite you to click the link below. Take a look at our plans and what we have for you. You'll get the summit, you'll get all the downloads, you'll get the guide, you get access to the school and the community for a year, and you're going to get 33% off of the regular price. So click the button below that says Own the Traditional Skills Summit. It's not going to interrupt this stream. It'll open in a separate tab so you can stay with us. While you're doing that and taking a look, I want to share with you what some of our members have said that have been here during this summit over the last week. Sarah says, "Oh my goodness, I have watched and rewatched so many of the videos to make sure I'm learning well. I'm a lifetime member and have no regrets. The school is such a blessing." Janelle says, "My son got a cut, but because of Doc Jones, we were able to stitch it up." Yeah, he's got a plan for you there without any issues, and use the duct tape method with herbs, and there is hardly any scar. Deborah says, "I've enjoyed my membership so much. My medicinal medicine cabinet is full, and I'm doing what I preach to my children. Learn something new every day," and learn it with your children. Like I was saying earlier, this is something that you can go on the journey together with. Here's what Kimberly had to say. I feel even wiser that I invested into the STS lifetime membership last year. That is probably going to be the best money I ever spent in my life. Even if I have to help others learn who have the land and resources, we can work as a team to survive. You guys, you can come join the school. You can get all this for $195. I know that's a big ticket for some folks, but I want to challenge you that it is not a cost of $195. In fact, we had somebody chime in earlier that to them it was a savings of what it did in the first little while just in saving their grocery bills. Somebody said they saved $195 just in what they stopped wasting on their home from the different things they learned in the classes. And so this is going to save you money. It's going to save you time on this journey. It's going to help you build things like your herbal medicine cabinet. It's going to help you build resiliency and community. And I'm so confident in that, as I know that our members are, that we give you a 30-day money-back guarantee. You can get in there right now. You can check. You have no risk. You essentially don't even have to spend anything. You sign up, and in 30 days, you can take as many classes as you want. You can take the downloads from the classes, because we have great little booklets with every class that has the recipes, that has a place to take notes, has the how-tos, it has diagrams. It's a companion. You can download those, and within 30 days, if you're not satisfied, if you don't think that this is for you, we'll give you a refund. We'll give you your money back. No questions asked. I want to invite you to join now. This is the lowest price of the year during the summit. And yes, for a few days after, I know you may need a little time to talk about it. Talk to your spouse. Can you fit it into the budget? All those things. Jump in now if you can. Take a few days if you need to. But it does end in a few days, and it's the lowest price of the year. And whether you join as an annual member, you can certainly come as a monthly member. We won't be able to deliver some of those things for keeps or mail that booklet to you on the monthly program, but that is a good way to get started. And when you come in, we'll never raise the price on you. You can come in as an annual member. You get to keep that annual price no matter how big the school gets, no matter how many classes we get in there. Someday we'll probably have to raise the price. We won't change it on you. And in fact, you can move between plans if you need to. If you have questions about that, feel free to drop them in the chat. We can answer those as well. But I want to get back to Doc here and make sure and take a few more questions. And we've got a few giveaways. In fact, let's start with an herbal respiratory kit. Okay, well, we can start with a lifetime membership too. That works. That's what's up on the screen. Let's start with a lifetime membership. And we're going to give away right now. And Connie Balance, you have won a lifetime membership to the School of Traditional Skills. Please email in there. You can see it on the screen at hello@traditionalskills.com, and we'll get you all set up. I'd like to go right through to that herbal respiratory kit as well, if we can. This comes from Doc Jones, and he's put this together for you. And this is a really, really great way to get started. I wish I could just give a whole bunch of these away from Homegrown Herbalist, which is Doc's company. These, you guys, there's a lot of companies out there. I can tell you, I've been to Doc's place twice. I've been to his company. I've seen what they do. I've seen how they grow the herbs, how they source them if they can't grow them all, how they make them. And, we're all about growing it ourselves, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes you don't have time. I love Doc's products and honored to be able to give this away. And it looks like we're going to give it to Lisa. Lisa, I don't know how to say that. Lisa Schwogler. Lisa Schwogler. There we go. It's up on the screen. Hopefully I got close on that. You have won an herbal respiratory kit from Doc Jones and the Homegrown Herbalist. Make sure and email us at hello@theschooloftraditionalskills.com. And I think we have some good things worked out with Doc as well, if you're a member of the school, for getting some of his products. So that's just another bonus to joining our community. But let's get Doc back in here and see if we can answer some questions, Doc. This is a big subject, but let's tackle a few of them.
But before we do that, let me just give a huge hearty amen to everything Josh says about the school. I don't make a dime if you sign up for this class today, but it's a phenomenal program. Their video team and the way they produce these lessons is tier 1, top notch. They're beautifully done, and they're really information rich, and they really teach you how to do stuff. I mean, they're amazing classes. I've watched a lot of them, and it's a great resource. You think about all the dumb things you spend your money on that don't do you any good versus this kind of information that can really change your life. It really is a no-brainer. So if you have the means to do it, I would sure support these guys and not be the generation that loses all this knowledge and doesn't know how to solve problems in a natural, easy way.
Wow, thanks for that, Doc. And you're right. Yeah, let's be the generation that picks it up, right? Let's be the generation that picks up all these skills and this knowledge and passes it on, puts it to work, but passes it on.
Yep.
And spreads it. Love that thought. Thank you. With that, I'll answer a quick one they put to the top of my lead. Desiree's asking, what if we're already part of the School of Traditional Skills? Will we have access to all of this that you were talking about? Yes, annual members will, monthly members will as well. Annuals will be able to download that. We're also going to send you that hard copy. Very, very excited about that. Let's see. Leah says, I'm going to go past that one because you kind of already covered it. Tobias is asking, any thoughts about freeze drying herbs versus traditional drying dehydrated? Benefits, concerns?
So freeze drying is a remarkable technology. I own 2 freeze dryers. I've got a big, they're both harvest drieds. One's a commercial one and one's a little regular home one. Freeze drying herbs is not the same as freeze drying food. If you freeze dry food, it's good for 25 years because food's made of, fats and carbohydrates and proteins and things that'll last 25 years if you get all the moisture out of them. And some herbs are as well. The only risk with freeze drying herbs is the temperature. And on a lot of these freeze dryers now, you can adjust that high temperature. And as long as it doesn't go over, I'd say 105, 110 degrees, you're probably okay. If it goes over that, some of the herbs will get really beaten up by that process and won't be nearly as medicinal. But if you can adjust that and fiddle a little bit, then yeah, freeze-dried herbs are great. When they come out of that freeze dryer, it's just like the food. I mean, the aroma and the aromatics and the color are still astoundingly good. That said, I don't know that they have a 25-year shelf life like beef stew has. Again, because the medicinals and the phytochemicals that are medicinal in a plant don't have near the longevity that proteins and fats and starches and some vitamins have. Okay. And so, dried herbs that you air dry have a shelf life of a year or so. And I honestly don't know if freeze-dried herbs have a shelf life that's way longer than that. I just don't know. I suspect that they don't. I suspect, I'd sure like them better 3 years from now than I did the stuff I dried on a rack with a fan. But I don't know that 10 years from now, those freeze-dried herbs are still going to be as medicinal as they are today. It's different than food. So if you want real long-term shelf life, use a tincture. That's the way to get long-term shelf life. And it's cheaper than a freeze dryer.
Yeah,
but use it on your stew.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's great.
Sounds like the freeze drying is great if you have one. It can be, but don't go buy a freeze dryer just for your herbs. No. Yeah. Other ways to do it. Fatima is asking if you have any suggestion for herbs to help lower blood pressure.
I do have, that's a very deep and complicated subject. There are some herbs that have significant benefits. There's some nutrients and dietary things that have significant benefits. I have a formula called circulatory support that has some of those in it, but we just did a lesson for the Homegrown Herbalist School just on blood pressure. It's that big and that complicated and that huge. And, my wife has had some significant struggles with life-threatening blood pressure. And by applying the stuff in that lesson, it's been a game changer. And it's all natural, easy stuff. There's nothing complicated, but there are some herbs that are great. I'm very careful about combining blood pressure herbs with blood pressure medications. That's a little bit of a red flag for me. Because if you have 2 guys doing the same thing, you can get too much of a good thing. Same thing with if somebody's on insulin, you don't give them an herb that lowers your blood sugar, but there are herbs you can take with some of the medications, and we go over all that too. Just in general, some herbs that are, pretty safe and not going to interfere with medications very much. Cayenne is good. Hawthorn's good. Garlic's good. None of those are going to beat up your blood pressure meds or complicate things, but there's a lot of other herbs too, but again, like I say, that gets into a pretty deep subject. We can talk about that for 3 hours, but there are things you can do. And we do have that class up on the Homegrown Herbalist School. But, if you want deeper, more specific information, that's a good resource too. But
Is there a
Yeah,
general guideline? There's like tons of questions on things like this, right? Things that I know are a little bit deeper than dealing with colds and flus, where you
right.
can say, look, we can tackle this at home, we can tackle this first aid, some of these first aid issues at home with colds and flus, but some of these things lend into like blood pressure. Okay, well, you're probably on medication. How does that mix? How do you give people a guideline that know or are learning that, there are herbs that can help this, but you've got to approach it carefully. So what's the guideline in going, okay, well, I want to start figuring out how to deal with blood pressure or asthma or, I got a list of them here: shingles, colitis, Crohn's, diabetes. It kind of goes on. And
Yeah.
how do you approach that in a safe manner where you can move towards beginning to use herbs and lessen your dependency, but do that safely and work with your doctor? Do you have advice for that?
I do. I first of all, for some things you can combine herbs and drugs and it's just fine. Sometimes the herbs make the drugs work lots better, and you can take less of the drug. For some things, the herbs make the drug be eliminated way more quickly than it should be. So you don't. So it's not working as well. For some things, they just interfere and make the drug not do its thing because they're doing something. And sometimes you get, too much of a good thing by combining herbs and drugs. So there are things, and we, for really deep questions like that, we cover things like that. Every issue and condition you just mentioned, we cover in great depth in the Homegrown Herbalist School. But if you can find a doctor that'll be supportive in helping you do some transitioning, a lot of them are now. A lot of them are getting very open-minded. I have a good friend who's a physician, and he was, a while back when my wife was doing some pharmaceutical stuff for her blood pressure, and she still is doing some pharmaceutical stuff for her blood pressure. But he said something really important. He said, we were talking about some herbal stuff because he knows me and he knows I'm an herbalist and I have a medical degree, and so I know some other stuff. And he, so we were chatting, and he said, what you really need to do is become an expert on yourself. Because what's going to be the perfect solution for you may not be the perfect solution for somebody else. And with something like blood pressure, especially, there can be all kinds of things that cause that, all kinds of elements. And so there's not just a magic bullet herb I can give you to fix that. That's a more involved, detailed process.
Yeah.
But there are some amazing things that can be done, nutritionally and dietarily and physical activity wise, and none of it's hard. Anybody, I don't care how out of shape you are or how old you are, you can do the physical stuff you need to do to have a significant impact on blood pressure. And so, we go into all that stuff in depth there, but, for a lot of things, the transition is very simple to get off the drugs and on the herbs. For other things, you really do need to have the doctor holding your hand and watching you and make sure you're okay while you do that. And for some things, you never should. For some things, that medication is the best solution. And so, discussing that with somebody or learning those principles from somebody that really understands both is, for those serious kinds of things, is probably the way to go.
Yeah.
Rather than watching a YouTube video and having, that guy said this would fix my cancer. That's probably a big leap on a YouTube video,
Yeah. Yep, I like that. Getting to know yourself. And I think both herbs and pharmaceuticals, if I understand it right, different things work for different people.
That's
right. On both of those. Gosh, there's so many things here. I want to tackle a couple of interesting and common ones. I've seen a few about migraines. Is there any herbal help for people that experience migraines?
Often there is. One of my there's a lot of herbs that can help migraines. One of my favorites is lemon balm. And lemon balm is super easy to grow. It's in the mint family. And I've had some people that have had dramatic, amazing results with lemon balm. Some people don't. Some people, it's rosemary. Some people, it's feverfew. Some people, it's, clematis. And so there's different plants, again, that we can try and do things with. Some people, it's dietary. Some people, vibration therapy. We have a little instrument that we sell on the website called a Resmax tuner, and sometimes that vibration can recalibrate and tell nerves to quit screaming about stuff that's not there, and so there's all kinds of different tools and modalities. But if I was going to just say, try this for migraines, I would say lemon balm is sometimes amazing for migraines. It's just a quick grab to try something, and it's really safe. That's a good one.
Good. Let's deal with teeth for a minute before we go, because that's another interesting area. Is there herbs to help just fight cavities and restore decaying teeth or help with teeth health? Things you recommend?
There's a lot of herbs we can use for dental stuff. Cloves are great. Clove tincture is great topically for dental pain. I have, calendula and Cleaver's and echinacea topically can help with tooth abscesses, topically and internally. For restoring enamel, horsetail is probably the best one for healing the actual enamel on the tooth. That can be a long-term project, but you absolutely can help. It's not the apocalypse yet. It might be better to go get a cap on that tooth and get it fixed, while we have a dentist.
Right.
But there's things you can do for dental stuff.
Good. All right. Well, you guys, we are out of time. Doc, I see people are asking for an STS class around animal care, vet care. We're going to talk about that one day. But that's another day. You guys, this has been a great time. Doc, thanks for hanging out with us this evening. Appreciate you being here and your classes. You guys, this has been a fantastic week. Thanks all of you that are here. This is hard to end, but all things must come to an end. But you still can get there and check these things out. So we're going to have I'm getting tired. We're going to have the free replays for you. Those links are on the page. This one will probably be up this evening if you've got the link from the page. If you don't, it'll be in an email tomorrow morning. But any of the morning emails this week should have that for you. And look, this conversation continues in the school. We're there for you. Want to invite you to come just be a member. Come own the summit. Be a part of what we're doing. This is not just about skills and classes. This is about changing our lives and changing the culture around us through embracing these skills, sharing them, learning them, doing them, stewarding the land well. And it's been an absolute honor for me to get to hang out with all of you. And while I haven't gotten to talk in the chat, I know you guys have had a lot of great conversations. And I hope you've enjoyed all the speakers this week and everything that we've brought to the table. Go back, check out anything if you'd like to review it. And I hope to see you in the school. So, been good hanging with you. I will see you soon. Goodbye.